Hello everyone and welcome to Jumbo Talkshow, Rayout Guild's #1 related Mabinogi talk show. Hello everyone, this is your host Jumbo. Tonight's discussion is going to be about the weapons in Mabinogi, whether you prefer a sword or axe weapon, blunt, or even wands. We're gonna do a basic review of each one. First things first, let's move on to the swords category. Starting with the one-handed swords, swords are most often the most balanced weapons in the game that I've found so far. They're ranging from low damage daggers to the high damage glory sword and dragon fang. Now, when it comes to swords, the thing is, pretty much anybody can use them, anywhere from elf to giant. It really depends on your playstyle. They are the universal weapon of the game, much like how humans are the red mage of the group. Swords can pretty much be used in any situation without any major drawbacks. However, the thing about swords I find is that unless you're holding a very rare sword like the glory sword or the dragon fang, they kind of have not so well upgrade paths. They seem their upgrades prefer balance. While yes, your skills will load better and you'll get better footing and styling or combat, they don't pack that well of a punch as other weapons do. Now, of course, the exceptions are once again swords like the glory sword and etc., whose upgrades can maintain a massive amount of damage. I actually have a glory sword that hits pretty hard. However, there can be some exceptions to this rule, such as the Gradius or the bastard sword. I have seen some bastard swords have a really high critical hit rate. In fact, I actually upgraded one to the fun of it, and it works pretty well. I mean, like I said, that's an exception to the rule, but I still just do not find swords to be other than a throwaway weapon for my instances. Next on, we'll be moving to axe weapon types. Not a very common weapon type used in the game. I actually use the warrior axe, which is a two-handed axe, and it actually has a pretty high critical rate. As with all axes, they have a wider range of damage, and they tend to sport higher critical hit rates. However, their range of damage isn't as severe as the blunt types. They're kind of like a fusion between the sword and the blunt itself. And I know some people prefer them. I've seen a couple of people on the Charlotte server using axes that have been upgraded for critical hit purposes. They're mainly not really used outside of just aesthetic looks or giants with their two-handed axes. Now, speaking of blunts, let's cover that section. Blunts are the main, basically D20 dice roll of the game, if I should call it. It's basically hit or miss with these things. Blunts have low balance to start off with, but they have insanely high attack power. And the problem with this is you need to upgrade the weapons themselves in order to gain that attack power. As you know, balance in the game is pretty much a dice roll, to where if you hit low balance, you'll hit a lower number on your damage threshold. Now, with blunts, however, you can get them insanely powerful. The Bipenis weapon, which is that two-headed axe that Edern sells in Bangor, is actually a pretty good weapon for this kind of thing. I've actually heard that you can upgrade it pretty well, and although I haven't used it myself, I heard it's pretty variable. Next up on our weapons list is the range weapons. We'll start off with the bow weapon. Now, I haven't really liked the bow. Me and the bow just do not get along together. Other people can be insane with bows, especially with the human's arrow revolver skill, which basically turns them into a Gatling gun of arrows. And people are effective with it, especially in PvP. That's one of the disdains I have about PvP, is that everyone uses a bow nowadays, at least how it is in the Carlat server. Whoever can snipe from the farthest distance is pretty much the winner of the PvP rounds. Not to be judgmental or anything. However, back to the discussion. Bows, they're pretty good weapons if you know how to use them. I, unfortunately, cannot use them effectively. When it comes to crossbows, however, this is a little bit more of a different game. Crossbows are a little bit slower, and their range is severely cut compared to most bows, but their critical hit rate is a lot through the roof, and they can deal a damaging punch. A technique that I used to use when I was using my elf character was something called zero shot, where the person would actually, despite of the bow's range advantages, would actually get up point blank and fire the arrow at 0%, and as you may not know, if you fire an arrow at 0% in Mabinogi, it actually activates a 1 through 100 dice roll, depending on your accuracy. It's completely random. You'll either hit or miss. Guaranteed. Now, there is actually another crossbow out there called the Arbalest, and I have no experience using that weapon, but I heard it's just an upgraded version of the crossbow, so we'll leave that out of the discussion for now until I find some more research about it. Next, we're going to move on to atlatls and javelins, the giant version of the ranged attack. Now, when this skill first came out, it wasn't very good. You had not so good range. The damage was severely weak. It was mainly just for show to give giants a little bit of the handicap to the elves. They normally sport pretty good damage, though. As of a certain update, I think it was around G9, they added a devastating 25-second cooldown to the skill, but buffed it severely, and the cooldown just did not match the buff at all. I mean, it made ranged attacks so hard to use. Now, as of currently, G15 Season 3 and 4 in North American Mabinogi, the atlatl and javelin set will now have a 7-second decrease while retaining the damage, and that makes it so much easier. It's actually very easy to use the atlatl nowadays, and I mean, I know the cooldowns are crippling at times, especially when you're ranging, but then again, who's a giant ranger anyway? It's actually quite useful for rafting. If I can get a good critical hit in with a high rank critical hit skill, I can often one-shot any hobgoblin on the shore, and whoever's rafting with you, of course, can pick off the other ones, but it's a good guaranteed start for when you're rafting. Okay, so now we're going to move on to special weapons. These weapons are mainly tools to use other skills, such as lances, knuckles, staves, and wands. Now, why I considered wands a special weapon is because they really serve no general purpose besides advancing your magical tiers. And there really isn't much to talk about. I mean, you can upgrade them to amplify your magic attacks or reduce mana, but that's about it. There's not actually a weapon in themselves. Staves, on the other hand, break the tier a little bit. They must be charged up using previous magic in order to use the higher tiered magic. They also come with a devastating hailstorm skill, which is kind of like the final hit of magic, I must say. And actually, with a 22 to 55 damage threshold, staves aren't that bad of a weapon. They're not the greatest thing, but you can technically use them as a two-handed custom weapon. Now, moving on to knuckles, I'm going to say this early. As of the G16 update, knuckles no longer serve the general 5-hit combo weapon. They actually get a whole new skill set compared to themselves, making them similar to wands, but more like staffs. They can be used on their own, but they're more in conjunction with the future skills such as dash punch, sky uppercut, and other things like that. Now, lances. This is a unique weapon in itself. It allows the character wielding them to attack with a ranged melee attack. Now, you can't get up close with them. The only skills you can really use up close is windmill. They come with their own version of charge, which instead of stopping at one enemy, goes through multiple enemies, and a special version of counter, which kind of combines counter and defense. You avoid the damage and block any attacks coming at you. However, lances are kind of hard to use. Unless you know what attack is coming at you at the right second, you're going to get hit while wielding a lance. There is just no defense with a lance. It is pure offense weaponry. And why I classified it as a special weapon instead of just a main weapon is, really, you want to only use your skills with the lance. The lance general attack, even though you get an added combo attack after rank 9, it puts you right next to the enemy and literally puts you in a bowl of hot water. It just doesn't really work out well unless you really use your skills very well. Alright everyone, now to wrap things up, we got 2 more weapons to talk about. We have the cylinders and the scythes. Now, with the cylinders, it's kind of the same situation as this wand. They're not actual weapons, but they're just tools for your alchemy, so there's not really much to talk about, although I do like the cylinders concept in themselves, especially with the roll cake cylinder, in which I have. Now, moving on to scythes, I haven't actually had to have any experience with this weapon yet, but from what I've heard, it's kind of a clunky weapon. It's just really difficult to use, and Nexon has had a recent error to where the repair cost is 120,000 gold a point, so scythes have pretty much become useless and other than for show lately. Well, that's it for all episode 1. Thanks for tuning in to Jumbo Talkshow. This is Jumbo Shaitan of Rayout Guild on the Tarlat server. Thank you for listening, and have a great night, everyone.